The sun set in a blood-red haze, sinking down into the silent forests of 𝗟𝗏𝗂𝗀. All was quiet in 𝗃𝗾𝗂𝗃, the mighty, impregnable fortress having fallen shortly after midday. The afternoon had been spent in skirmishes with pockets of dwarves who were retreating, fighting, back into the mountains. Many had escaped, the charge of the knights having been effectively held up by a small group of pikesmen who had stood their ground, when the gates were breached, stubbornly refusing to budge. Carus, carrying the unconscious king in his arms, flew by griffin back to 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗀, accompanied by those of Duncan's officers still alive. The remainder of the army of the mountain dwarves, at home in the caves and rocks of the snow-covered passes, were making their way back to 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗀. The Dwarves who had betrayed their kinsmen were drinking Duncan's captured ale and boasting of their deeds, while most of Caramon's army regarded them with disgust. Tonight, as the sun set, the courtyard was filled with dwarves and humans celebrating their victory, and by officers trying in vain to stem the tide of drunkenness that was threatening to wash everyone under. Shouting, bullying, and smashing a few heads together, they managed to drag off enough to post the watch and form burial squads. Chrisania had passed her trial by blood, though she had been kept well away from the battle by a watchful Caramon. He had, once they entered the fort, managed to elude him. Now, cloaked and hooded, she moved among the wounded, surreptitiously healing those she could without drawing unwanted attention to herself. And, in later years, those who survived would tell stories to their grandchildren, claiming that they had seen a white-robed figure bearing a shining light around her neck, who laid her gentle hands upon them and took away their pain. Caramon was, meanwhile, meeting with officers in a room in 𝗃𝗃𝗃, planning their strategy, though the big man was so exhausted he could barely think straight. Thus, few saw the single, black-robed figure entering the open gate of 𝗃𝗃𝗃. It rode upon a restive black horse that shied at the smell of blood. Pausing, the figure spoke a few words to his mount, seeming to soothe the animal. Those that did see the figure paused for a moment in terror, many having the fevered or drunken impression that it was death in person, come to collect the unburied. Then someone muttered, "The wizard," and they turned away, laughing shakily, or breathing a sigh of relief. His eyes obscured by the depths of his black hood, yet intently observing all around him. Raistlin rode forward until he came to the most remarkable sight on the entire field of battle. The bodies of 100 or more Gully dwarves, lying, for the most part, in even rows, rank upon rank. Most still held their pikes, many upside down, clutched tightly in their dead hands. There were also, lying among them, though, a few horses that had been injured, generally accidentally, by the wild stabs and slashings of the desperate Gully dwarfs. More than one animal, when hauled off, was noted to have teeth marks sunk into its forelegs. At the end, the Gully dwarves had dropped the useless pikes to fight as they knew best, with tooth and nail. "This wasn't in the histories," Raistlin murmured to himself, staring down at the wretched little bodies. His brow furrowed. His eyes flashed. "Perhaps," he breathed, "this means time has already been altered." For long moments he sat there, pondering. Then suddenly he understood. None saw Raistlin's face, hidden as it was by his hood, or they would have noted a swift, sudden spasm of sorrow and anger pass across it. "No," he said to himself bitterly. pitiful sacrifice of these poor creatures was left out of the histories, not because it did not happen. It was left out simply because. He paused, staring grimly down at the small, broken bodies. No one cared.